It's time to have your say. Welcome back to the Q&A, answering your questions in the wrestling community. It's Ask SCW coming straight after this. So welcome back. As always, going to be answering your questions in the wrestling community on WWE, NXT, AEW, and much more on today's show. If you want to be involved on the next Ask SCW, you can drop a comment here on YouTube, leave the hashtag AskSCW, or you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all should come up on your screen right about now, and a note to include your question and give you a shout out on the next episode. And just before we get started today, to go and make sure to follow West Coast Podcast on YouTube. Now go and subscribe to their channel. I will be appearing on their channel, that's right, tonight. That is Sunday evening, so if you're watching this after Sunday, that video is already available. I will leave the link of that video at the end of this video, so make sure to go and check that out. Give them a follow, subscribe, fantastic content they do as always. I'm really looking forward to being a part of their show. But without further ado, let's get on with our first question this week. And Corey BT is kicking off proceedings for us on Ask SCW. Now that my guy Hangman Adam Page is the #1 contender to face Kenny Omega for the AEW World title, do you think Full Gear is the perfect place for this match to happen? Fantastic question to kick things off, and yes is the answer. And let me explain why for the next minute or two, because if you look at the history of these two together, the storyline we've had, it's sort of culminated over the last couple of years. Single stars coming together as a tag team, then Kenny Omega, of course, wanting to go his own separate way, where Hangman was happy to be the tag team partner. They both went into the Eliminator tournament, which of course was at Full Gear last year. Kenny Omega picking up the victory. It's almost been since then that Hangman has been almost self-sabotaging those opportunities, since never quite believing himself that he can be at that level of a Hangman Page, that level of being a world champion, even when others like the Dark Order have believed in him. And now we fast forward to where we are at this point. Hangman seems to believe he's come back and put himself in the position, of course, winning that #1 contenders casino ladder match this past week on Dynamite, which was a great comeback, by the way. Let's strike while the iron is hot, because Hangman is so over. Everybody wants it to happen, to see Hangman Adam Page dethrone Kenny Omega for the championship. It almost feels like it's the most predictable route, but you know what? It will be the most satisfying. And Full Gear also, yes, is the perfect place, because that world title eliminator match was last year at Full Gear. Talk about the difference a year can make. Kenny Omega has been, tearing things up as the #1 heel in the company as world champion almost since then. For Hangman to come in this year as the #1 contender and then win the championship would just feel the perfect blow-off and conclusion to what's been this nearly 2-year storyline. Of course, if Hangman was not to win the championship at that opportunity, fans might start to, feel that sense of disappointment. The feeling you get when you've been following the other company, you follow so long, devote so much time in wanting to see that certain superstar get to the next level. I think fans may start to not be as invested with what's going on with Hangman if he doesn't win on this opportunity. So for me, strike the iron while it's hot. He is so over. He's getting big pops every time. Cowboy S-word is being screamed to the rafters each and every time he appears. And even just with every appearance, he gives you a wow factor. You've only got to talk about that sort of dead eye that he did off the top of the ladder to Pat going through the table. Oh my word, that was just awesome. So yeah, for me personally, Full Gear is the perfect place, and they need to make it happen, because Hangman Adam Page, you've made the star. Once he beats Kenny Omega after the year Kenny's had, you've got the perfect babyface that could be the #1 guy in your company going into 2022. Beyond the Ring podcast of our next question now. New challenges for Hangman Adam Page if the match happens at Full Gear and if he becomes the AEW World Champion. Well, if it is to happen at Full Gear, the possibilities are endless. Just look at that roster right now. There's so many great options. Of course, there's always the rematch of Kenny Omega that can happen, but look on the heel side. We've got Miro, who's probably ready to jump to that next level right now. MJF is someone there possibly as well. You could have a match with Chris Jericho again at some point further down the line, just because, that was the match that Hangman lost before. It's almost that redemption story once again. Continuing with Jericho as a babyface, we can continue with more babyfaces. We've got CM Punk in the company, Bryan Danielson, Christian Cage, and John Moxley can come back into the championship picture. Although I would personally prefer Moxley to go heel if that match was to go down. So the possibilities are endless. All the people that of course Kenny Omega over this last year come back into the conversation. We've got new challengers that are, rising up the ranks all the time. So in my opinion, looking at it, it would be a very healthy looking, fresh main event scene if Hangman Adam Page was to win the gold. And I think that's something that's definitely needed to happen at Full Gear. Personally, for me, I'm looking forward to it, even if it's like 6 months down the line when we get Hangman versus MJF for the gold. But let's also not forget that the world title eliminator, of course, that Hangman was involved in last year and Kenny Omega in the final, has been announced for Full Gear this year. We'll learn the combatants that will be in that tournament next week on AEW. So I'm looking forward to finding out who will be in that tournament. Then could start to make a prediction perhaps who could win it. And that probably most likely would be Hangman's first challenger if he was to win the gold at Full Gear. Main event, Chris, of our next question now. Who do you think will hand CM Punk and Bryan Danielson their first loss in AEW? Superb question, this one. Honestly, it needs to be a statement victory, whoever defeats CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. It shouldn't be a mid-carder that you hope is going to be someone that's going to get towards the top in 3 to 6 months, although that would take them a long way in getting them towards the top. I think right now, for a first person to beat either of them, should be someone that's going to be a game changer, already in the main event, or it's going to take him to that status where they literally will be a challenger for the world title going forward. So 3 names pop to mind instantly. Kenny Omega being one of them, the current AEW World Champion, because, well, these people coming into that brand only solidifies Kenny even stronger as the world champion and as the face of AEW. It shows that the other company, when these superstars have been there before, they actually can't come in and just take the gold like it's been done, saying other promotions like, Impact Wrestling previously. Of course, Hangman Adam Page, as we've said already, if he was to become the world champion, would be someone that could be quite handy for this spot. But I also think, personally, being a babyface, Hangman wouldn't be the right candidate. I think a heel would be most suited for this role, and you know where I'm going to go with this. That's right, I'm talking MJF. He's someone that I think would really suit being the guy that could defeat these for the first time ever, and then pushing on into the main event picture, and then pushing on to perhaps become world champion this time, who knows, in 12 months from now. That's definitely how I think it should be done. I think it should be made a big deal of as well. So really like this question. For me, if I had to pick one of each, let's say that Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson will have their match once again at some point down the line. I think when Kenny isn't world champion, perhaps at Revolution, that's when I think Bryan Danielson will suffer his first loss, and I think MJF will be the one to first off defeat CM Punk, because, well, MJF is well protected, it will give him the heel heat, and let's just think, on the mic, these two would be an amazing program in itself. So yeah, I mean, it would get MJF to the world title level, and then if he was to take on Hangman Adam Page, that would get him to where he would become the next AEW world champion, and you'd have no problem in believing in it either. Chris Heck from Geek Ketchup Podcast for us now with the next question. Who will be the very first AEW TBS Women's Champion? Great question, and of course the belt was unveiled this week. Of course, a load of women going to be vying for it. It seems Britt Baker's going to be watching from afar, saying that they can fight over another title and not be so jealous of her. But yeah, who should it be? I mean, I think it should be, again, looking to get that sort of person you want to get to the next level, perhaps in 6 months to a year. So right now, the front runner should be Jade Cargill, in my opinion. She's been winning lots and lots of matches, and I think to win this championship, it doesn't put her in the AEW Women's Championship picture too soon, because I don't think she's quite ready for that role yet. Another person that I'd want to see would be Tay Conti. I think she'd be amazing for that position, but I do feel at this particular moment that Jade would be the one that they will go with. But of course, if people have been losing the championship matches as well, so like Ruby Soho, Chris Statlander, they'd be good for in and around that picture as well, to sort of give credibility to that champion if it is Jade who wins it first time round. So yeah, Jade Cargill will be my prediction of who I think it will be. If it's who I want to be, I'd like it to be Tay Conti. Wrestling by Waldridge, our next question now. Who do you think could be the next 3 wrestlers potentially the jump ship from AEW to WWE? Awesome question, this one. I mean, everyone usually talks about the idea of people going from WWE to AEW. We don't really get the conversation of it going from AEW to WWE. And when you look at it, I mean, there has been a couple that have slipped through the radar that have ended up in WWE, like B. Priestley being one of them, Ben Carter being another. I think both representing NXT UK at this particular moment. But yeah, other superstars that could do that. Brian Cage is the first one that springs to mind immediately, because he's got the look, he's got the attributes of what would fit as a natural WWE guy, and he's just for me, not being booked right in AEW, and it feels like there has been potential, I don't want to say unrest, but kind of like you've seen little tweaks of moments where you think maybe it could be frustration, maybe what we're seeing with Melissa Santos, perhaps in other interviews or on social media. I know Brian Cage also responded to that as well, so there is potential that could be one name that could come to fruition. I look at the tag team divisions, and I always feel that Proud and Powerful at the moment look like they're being pushed now finally to go towards those tag team championships, but again, even though they've been part of the Inner Circle, they never really had that position where I believe they're going to be pushed to this point that they are now. We're finally getting, but if they weren't to succeed against the Lucha Bros, they could fade away again. So that would be a tag team that I could see potentially going to WWE because of the fact that, you know, not all tag teams can be pushed at the same time, and that's a very talented tag team out there. So I think that they would have something to offer to WWE as well, because WWE would have to want these talents as well as them obviously just jumping ship. There are a few names that come to mind I think that WWE would want, but who would necessarily go? We'd have to wait and see. I mean, Ray Phoenix, I could see them wanting someone like him, but I'll say a Joey Janela just to finish up, because things haven't quite worked out for him either at this point in AEW. So yeah, they'll probably be the three that I would pick, but it's really hard to say because a lot of people that are in AEW, they seem to have this togetherness and this kind of, we want to get it to that next level. But hey, there's always going to be one or two that there will be unrest, and of course with more superstars that seem to be coming into AEW as well over recent weeks and months, you know, other spots have been filled and taken, which makes it harder for certain people to get back up the pecking order. So eventually some may look to jump ship. So yeah, it's a fun question, and definitely be interested to know your thoughts in the comments below, who you think will be jumping from AEW to WWE. Austin Whitley with our next question now. With the current brackets, who are your picks for the King of the Ring tournament and Queen's Crown? Well, after watching WWE this week, we saw the brackets, so I gave my thoughts before we knew anything. Now I can give them now that we know. And looking at the King of the Ring tournament, as you can see the brackets on your screen right about now, there's no way Sami Zayn's getting to that final, so Finn Balor's definitely representing on one side. The Raw bracket looks really interesting because, I mean, Xavier Woods surely is going to be getting to the semi-finals, and is it going to be against Kofi Kingston? New Day face-off? That could be an interesting match to watch. Perhaps passing of the torch to get Xavier towards the final. I'd quite like to see that, but I'm not going to rule out Jinder Mahal either, because to go through the New Day, maybe he's going to get a push now he's moving over to SmackDown. I mean, the last time Jinder was on SmackDown, he did pretty well for himself. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting how it's going to play out. But if I had to pick a final and who I think is going to win it, I think Xavier Woods and Finn Balor is going to be the final. I'm going to say that I think Finn Balor will win the King of the Ring tournament, but I'm really interested to see how it's going to go. But as for Queen's Crown, I'm going to talk about that after I talk about Jamie Holmes' question, and he asks who I think will win the Queen's Crown tournament. And for Jamie, it's either Natalya, who could be the Queen of Hearts, like how Owen was the King of Hearts when he won King of the Ring. It's a fantastic point. And Shayna Baszler to go a long way in rebuilding her, plus her nickname is the Queen of Spades. Well, if we have a quick look at the brackets right now, and obviously we've seen on SmackDown this past week, Carmella and Zelina Vega get themselves into the semi-final. On that Raw side there, I mean, you've got Natalya and you've got Shayna Baszler. I think, personally, Natalya's going to lose to Doudrop, and I think we'll get the Doudrop Baszler semi-final, especially as they had the stare down, I think, last week on Raw, so I think that they'll eventually have a match that will get Shayna to the final. And I think it's probably going to be a Shayna Baszler-Carmella final. I was expecting Liv Morgan to get all the way to the final. That was the prediction before, that would be the natural final. I thought Baszler would win the whole tournament. I still stick by that. Like you said, the Queen of Spades seems a natural fit, and it makes her a ready-made challenger for a championship on SmackDown going forward. But also, looking at it, I do feel that the reason Carmella and Zelina Vega are in this spot is because, well, to have a second match on the Crown Jewel show, I think it's going to be a squash match. I think it's going to be very, very quick, and I think Shayna Baszler is going to dominate through this entire tournament. I think she's going to destroy Dana Brooke. I think she's going to dominate Doudrop, and I think in the final she's going to make very quick work, whether it's Carmella or Zelina Vega. Prayarg with the next question now. Hope I've said that right. He said, lol, when I heard about WWE doing King of the Ring again, I had Shinsuke winning in my mind, and now looked at the bracket. Well, I'm glad you brought this up because, I mean, to be honest, if people watched my live Q&A from earlier this week, Shinsuke Nakamura was my prediction because I thought he would defend the crown and it could be a good position to get him back into the main event picture. Perhaps he could take on Roman Reigns later on this year. So that's what I thought would happen, but instead he's kind of given up the King gimmick. He said that he didn't need it, and to be fair, I suppose he doesn't. It does seem a bit strange that he spent most of the summer fighting for it to get it off Corbin and just to hand it over, but at the same time, Yeah, I don't think Shin needs it at this point. He's the Intercontinental Champion. He's got Rick Boogs, which I think is getting over very well with the crowd, especially when Pat McAfee's also marking out each and every week, dancing on the announce table on top of Michael Cole, depending on which he fancies. So, yeah, I mean, to be honest, really, I don't think Shin needs it. He's got enough going on around him, and I think the King, when talking to Tom Colohue this week, Tom said the crown is, a small part of the presentation of what we've got of Shinsuke right now, and to be honest, I don't think he needs it, and I agree with him. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I think Shin will be just fine without it, but I do think it's a bit strange he didn't even defend it, even if he kind of lost it in the qualifying round, or if he'd got to the final, say it wasn't Finn Balor winning and it was Xavier Woods, perhaps he lost in the final and then would hand over the crown. It could be a good passing of the torch, a passing of the guard. Would have been quite interesting to see, but it wasn't to be, but I don't think it's a big miss when you look at it. Martin Lorenzo Carrillo, the next questions now. Aside from Drew McIntyre and Jeff Hardy, who could be the next top babyface of SmackDown with its new roster, and who would you choose to book as a top challenger for Reigns within a year? Superb question, this one. Let's bring up the graphics, shall we, of the SmackDown rosters. We've got it right now. I mean, like you said there, we've got Drew McIntyre, that's going to be an actual challenger. I mean, of course, I mentioned a minute ago, Shinsuke Nakamura could be someone that could take on Roman Reigns. He's having an outstanding year. We've got the New Day there as well. Should Xavier Woods or Kofi win King of the Ring, that would be a natural challengers, perhaps of the TLC pay-per-view, to go for Reigns. Could be a fun one-off. Ricochet could get back in the picture if they wanted to give him a push again. Cesaro is there also. So there are many contenders that could be fitting for that role. And you mentioned Jeff Hardy as well there. And let's not forget also that perhaps Brock Lesnar, it might not be a one-and-done rivalry. They might choose to extend it over, months if they want to. It could even be the WrestleMania match, should they want to drag it out that long, because we know Brock does part-time, he's not there all the time, so it wouldn't be a surprise depending on how it was to go down. And let's not forget as well, Goldberg, another part-timer, could be a match that Roman Reigns could have over the next 12 months. If it's me of building new stars and getting new people in positions, then personally for me, I mean, I would still love to see Cesaro in that position, and I'd like to see Ricochet get a push if I was going to ask for anyone to get a push on this SmackDown lineup that isn't already. But yeah, perhaps Hit Row as well could be an outside chance as well, depending on how well they connect early doors. But I think for Hit Row, their early part of SmackDown, I think the mid-card and the tag team titles are probably where the ceiling should be to start off with, because I do think if you give them too much too soon, there is a chance that maybe they could lose momentum very quickly if they were to have a stumbling block somewhere. So yeah, I think for me, if I was to pick myself, King of the Ring winner, number one, if it's not Finn Balor, it's Xavier Woods, could be a good contender. Shinsuke could be a good contender as well. Long term, then yeah, let's get Cesaro and Ricochet back towards that top end of the pitch. There'd be good matches for Roman Reigns, even if they were not to dethrone the Tribal Chief. Mike, a Tanhabs Mike, my next question now. Should Edge versus Seth Rollins Hell in a Cell been saved for a major pay-per-view like Survivor Series? And do you think this has been the best build for a Hell in a Cell match since The Undertaker versus Triple H at WrestleMania 28? Fantastic question, this one. And who thought we'd get a Hell in a Cell match when it's not a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view? It makes so much sense for once. Thank you, WWE, for actually booking a storyline that fits and suits the Hell in a Cell. And I agree with you, this is probably the best built Hell in a Cell match we've had since The Undertaker vs Triple H at WrestleMania 28. I can't argue with that. I can't think of one off the top head in the last 10 years that warrants it as well as this does. Because yes, probably wasn't the biggest fan of the breaking thing that Seth Rollins did last week on SmackDown. I think that could have been booked a bit better in my opinion. But if you look at the rivalry, look at the story we've had with Seth and Edge for the last number of months, it's got personal and it's always escalated further each week, each match, and it's got to the point where it warrants a Hell in a Cell match. Personally, I thought we're going last man standing. Maybe I quit at a push for the Crown Jewel pay-per-view, but we're having it here with Hell in a Cell, and I think it's perfect. The question is, should it have been at Survivor Series? I mean, they treat Crown Jewel as a bigger event, it seems, so that's going to be the reason why it's there. It will be interesting to see what they do inside Hell in a Cell. Usually it's more of a house show environment, you could say, when we have these shows in Saudi Arabia. But, I mean, it's a big-time field match, and for what they treat as a big-time field pay-per-view, I would have liked it as Survivor Series, but they will stick with the traditional Raw versus SmackDown, I imagine, with that format. So that's probably why we're not getting it there. But yeah, I'm all in favour for this match being booked this way, especially, you know, when you look at the first match, how it was done, the second match of how, you know, Edge took the curb stomp, and it's just got more personal ever since. So yeah, I'm really happy that we've got a gimmick match that's given, that's not labelled to the pay-per-view and given at an appropriate moment. It really feels like a breath of fresh air that we haven't seen or felt for a long time in WWE, hence the comparison of another match that was made from nearly 10 years ago. Last question this week coming from Supersonic X: with the women's divisions on both Raw and SmackDown on a tight spot, do you think it'll be difficult without Asuka and Bayley moving forward post the WWE draft? Well, it's been a bit of a difficult spot in general at the moment in WWE, and I kind of feel like even when both were still around, I mean, Asuka in her last sort of efforts before being written off TV lost in a handicap match, a 2-on-1 advantage to drop in less than 2 minutes. Bayley was left off of WrestleMania, so I don't know if it would make much difference without being horrible with these two not being around. It feels like WWE are just in a tight spot right now, but where, you know, two of their arguably bigger stars are out with injury right now, you would say this is a good opportunity to perhaps put some faith and build into the stars of the future, which this is why a lot of people at the moment are crying to see a Liv Morgan pushed up the card a bit further. And of course, we didn't really get our wish in the end this week. She lost in very quick fashion to Carmella. And one thing that I do think is a bit of a sour taste with SmackDown recently is the women's action is not lasting long enough. I mean, you've got the men's King of the Ring matches, which are lasting, what, nearly 10 minutes ago. The two, you know, Queen's Crown matches we had lasted a combined total of about, what, 3 minutes and sort of 30 seconds. Roman's entrance on SmackDown was 3 minutes and 55 seconds. So that tells you everything you need to know with current attitude towards women wrestling, unfortunately, in WWE. And sadly, I do feel that that could be the same case even if Asuka and Bayley were currently there. But I'd like to hope and think not really. But you know, until we see the evidence in front of our very eyes, unfortunately, I can't change my stance on it. But fingers crossed, we will see some progression and it will get better, especially when these drafts are moved over and taken into full effect, because we've got Charlotte on SmackDown, we've got, you know, Sasha, we've got Baszler on SmackDown, and on Raw, we've got some of those stars that are up-and-comers that will hopefully get more TV time on Raw, because Raw does put on more women's matches, so hopefully they'll get more time to prosper going forward. But that's all from me this week anyway. Thank you for watching Ask SCW as always. I really appreciate everyone's questions as always, and make sure to go and follow everybody on Twitter as well. Support each of us here in the wrestling community. Let's all grow together as one. But thank you for watching as always. Please like the video, share and subscribe. Drop a comment as well. It really helps the channel out as well, and I look forward to interacting with you on any of the topics that have been discussed in today's video. Make sure as well to go and check out West Coast Podcast as well. I'll leave the link coming up in a couple of seconds so you can go and check that video out. Of course, if you are watching this on the Sunday still and want to see it whilst it's going on live, then it will be midnight UK time. That will be 7 PM Eastern, which means 4 PM Pacific. And as well as that, also SCW Rewind, the retro review, will be coming back this Friday, 8:30 PM UK time, which of course it means 3:30 PM Eastern, which makes me believe that would be at 12:30 PM Pacific time. And the show that you voted for was Halloween Havoc 1997, and what a stacked show that is as well. Looking forward to reviewing that on the channel. Wrestling by Waldridge will be joining me. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching. Cheers for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time. All the best, and check out some of these videos on your screen right now. Have a great day.